now introduce Dr. Anita Banerjee, who is an obstetric physician and general medical division and specialized in diabetes and endocrinology. She has a major role to play in the RCP, where she chairs their obstetric medicine group, and in particular their cardiac group. And she's going to talk to us now about the Cardiometabolic Disease Prevention Summit Series. Anita, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jimmy, for those kind words. And thank you to APEC and everybody here to give me this time. So I'm coming here as my generalist and diabetologist hat and not my obstetric physician hat. But lots of things we've talked about today are close to my heart. Okay, so I'm now going to talk about men and women and remind us that there's lots of changes happening across the country and globally about prevention. Lucy mentioned the system change that is happening across our country with our 3 shifts of prevention from sickness, from hospital to community, and from analog to digital. And what I would remind you is that from the Royal College point of view, what we're doing as physicians is trying to understand what we can do to work with men and women. So I'm not going to go through all this slide in a lot of detail, but it matters to men and women. Okay, the most important thing, and I think we've heard it today, when we talk about cardiometabolic, it is obesity, it is hypertension, it is dyslipidemia, but it's also multimorbidity. And a bit like all of you across the country, we are seeing more multimorbidity with our women with pre-eclampsia and other aspects. The inequity I'm going to touch on, and I'm so pleased with the work that Lucy's presented this morning, Asma presented from the RCOG, that RCP are also trying to work on this and work together. So what I want to introduce, and I'm really spending, and I won't take long, I promise you, Andy, I'll give you your time back, is we're organising a summit. We've organised a series of summit with a mission statement of action on education and training to really implement a holistic healthcare pathway that addresses both health and equity, but the multi-system cardiometabolic prevention that is needed in the 21st century. So I'm changing gear here a little bit from what we've talked about today, and I'm very aware of Bernie and Laura's work today that she presented. But what we're looking at from the RCP point of view is a series of summits thinking about what is the state at the moment, what's happening across the country, because as we all know, too many good things are happening, but they haven't got a voice, and we need to understand and upscale them. What are the current models for these aspects? What are the training needs? And I'll be honest with you, from the RCP summit, what we're looking for is what are the gaps? And where do we in women's health think those gaps are? And for those of us that were in the meeting yesterday with Baroness Merrin and the round table that was led by Dame Leslie Reagan, you know, there are some important aspects from women's health. And then more importantly, what is going to be the output for this? So what we're having is we've got a series of meetings, and it's invitation only. And I'm very pleased that Marcus will be representing Action on Pre-eclampsia. Is we're going to have the 2nd of December where we're going to come together and try and understand what the trends are across the country. And then we'll spend 2 other days throughout the year in 2026 looking at and sharing what models of prevention are happening across the country. And I'll be honest with you, I feel very privileged being an obstetric physician and a generalist, because I can see good on both sides. And I feel our job together is bridge that and collaborate together to get the best out of everything. And then we'll be talking about education and training. And I think that day, women's health, we really need to have a voice there to see what's happening, but also align this with what's happening across the country. And at the end, we'll be coming together to hopefully help with policy changing. Now, why is this important? We need the right people in the room to talk about lived experience, but also understand the clinical and the system changes. What we need to do is remember that all of us have the lens of a holistic review. So the patient-centered work is what's going to make a difference. And the summit will try and find the gaps and try and find solutions as we go through that year. The draft timeline at the moment, as I said to you, there is a meeting happening on the 2nd of December in Liverpool. There will be the second summit on the 23rd of February, which will really be looking at what systems there are, what's happening across the country for both men and women with primary, secondary prevention, both in the community and in secondary care. And then later in the year, there will be some opportunities to do training and education. And what I wanted to remind you, and this is why I wanted a couple of minutes here, is that we've all got to be on the table everywhere to remind ourselves why women are important and ensure that we have this collaborative and coordinated approach. We've talked about it today, and we've talked about the life course of a woman, and we know there are pockets of opportunity, and Laura presented beautifully in the work that she's just shown us that there are times when we need to do things better, but actually with austerity in the NHS, with knowing there's no change in money, but the way we use the money matters. How are we going to get all of us upskilled and trained? And absolutely understand why there is this social deprivation and what are we going to do to actually improve it. So hopefully in 20 years, and when we have this meeting, when I'm not here anymore in this world, that actually we no longer have to talk about the fact that there is inequity. But I suppose having those essential voices matters. And I'm here today to say to you that you will have opportunities, many of you, to pitch into this, but also getting the right people in and ensuring we've got people from social prescribing, undergraduate, postgraduate, NHSE, but also system change with the Royal College of Psychiatry, Royal College of Emergency Medicine, because all of you know that every encounter and every contact matters if we're talking about prevention. The summit output from the first one, the 2nd of December, will be an internal report, and then we hope to have an outward-facing document that we can share with you all, and then think about the proposed outputs, particularly for 2026 in February and May. I'm going to stop there and thank you for giving me the time to share this important piece of work. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important piece of work, but it's interesting that it's coming from the sort of medicine end of it, and you know, to some extent that obstetrics and women in maternity appears to be not a major role there, but a part of it. And one of the things it's my understanding is of all the women who present with cardiovascular disease or in the future, a relatively small number of them can be picked up of having pre-eclampsia. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right, Jimmy. The pre-eclampsia women are one cohort of it. This prevention program is the whole life course, because as we know, women live 7 years longer than men, but unfortunately in those 7 years they have much more multi-morbidity and morbidity. So it's about approaching all of that aspect. Why is it coming from RCP and not from Obs and Gynae? I suppose it's coming from everywhere. I'm very privileged. I'm co-leading on this piece of work, and I've ensured that inequity and women have an equal time and airing throughout the summits.
No, I'm not criticizing you doing it. What I'm just wondering is that, you know, how big a voice should and could maternity have and the RCOG have in feeding into this work? And I mean, let alone it's male and female, but it's just wondering,
Yeah.
you know, how, because one of the problems we talked earlier about gaining funding, one of the problems of funding of research in maternity is that most people outside maternity never see it as that important. And it's how do you get that bigger voice, or do we deserve the bigger voice?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And two things I would say is that I think with the modern service framework and the prevention work that's being led by Bod Goddard and Dawn Adamson, Lisa Anderson, and a number of people, I think the output there and what they want from the national picture, what the summit like the one that's being presented to you today, and the work that's happening throughout the work that we've talked about today, there's an opportunity to make a change and make it impactful.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Anita. I very much look forward to hearing what comes out of these meetings, because we do a lot of talking. It'll be nice to actually get to a point of doing something to make a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Um,